What's good, all you cool cats and kittens? This is your Commissioner Tim back at you with the Week 2 recap, and we're going to be looking at the Week Three's matchups. We've also got a cool new section coming up, and definitely going to be wrapping up this video with our power rankings heading into Week 3. So, getting started with the first matchup last week, Trust the Process against Wuxie Fingerhold. Trust the Process gets into the win column, and Wuxie Fingerhold drops. Both teams sim at 1-1, tied for third in the league. Trust the Process outputs the second highest points in the league again at 161.9. It was really, really great to see Kyler Murray taking off, putting up fantasy top tier quarterback numbers again that we wished for back in 2021 during our inaugural draft. And Malik Neighbors, man, he had something like 70% target share from Danny Jones. That guy only looks to throw to one single target. I'm so glad that's Malik Neighbors. We might actually have a fantasy relevant quarterback in the Giants offense this year. And Derek Carr looking prime, looking like a stud, looking like he's about to have his career season of his career so far. Looks tremendously great through the first 2 weeks of the season, leading the NFL leading offense for the New Orleans Saints. Stinkers wise, we've got Kyle Pitts. That entire Atlanta Falcons offense still needs to get figured out. Kirk Cousins, until he gets to figure it out, starts to look a little bit less so rusty. I think we're going to continue to have this issues at tight end position for me. Thankfully, George Kittle looked good in week 2. Hopefully, he's going to be able to stay healthy and active and fill in until the Falcons starts to pick it up. Now over to moving to Wuxie Fingerhold. Scores the ninth highest, so the second lowest in the league. But it was really great to see JSN finally step up. When he was drafted in the first rounds last year, everyone knew that it was going to be a slow rookie season with that really studded roster, the receiver DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett ahead of him on the depth chart. But I think this is the season. JSN looks like it's him and DK taking the commanding share of that Geno Smith target share. Both of them, I think, combined for over 80% of Geno's passes this past week. And you had Tyler Lockett with just 2 receptions. So if JSN is going to be certainly the number one, number two offense and option for Geno and the Seahawks offense, I think Wuxie Fingerhold is going to finally have his draft pick from last year pay off handsomely. That said, it's really, really tough to see Tua. I'm going to stick to fantasy football topics here, but really, really tough to see him go out. Certainly, that's not going to do well for Wuxie Fingerhold's quarterback positions, especially with how bad Caleb Williams has looked to start the season. But as we saw Thursday Night Football, Aaron Rodgers looks like he can still play. He was perky this Thursday, and so if Caleb Williams can get off of his rookie rust a little bit and get acclimated to NFL speeds a little bit better, and if his O-line actually starts to do something, especially Nate Davis at the guard, then Aaron Rodgers and Caleb Williams should be at least enough to get Wuxie Fingerhold by our league with those quarterback options there. Moving over to matchup number 2, we have Bills Mafia going against Moncton Meerkats. This was the commissioner pick of the week in terms of the matchups. Bills Mafia drops to 1-1. Moncton Meerkats stays perfect in the winners column at 2-0. Relatively low scoring matchup for the caliber of both of these teams. About 118.7 wins it for Kyle, third highest in the league, and fifth highest in the league for Bills Mafia. So as you can tell by the rankings of those low scores, it was a pretty low output week overall league-wide, obviously with the exception of the top 2 scores, and certainly Ryan scoring over 190 this week. But I do want to stick with notables on Bills Mafia first. So Dobbins, 19.6 points this week. He starts off the season with 200-yard back-to-back weeks to start the season. He's the only running back in the league to do so. And you had also Ramondre going for 20 points and 16-point outing. Obviously, he laid a goose egg here with 0.3 points in the Thursday Night Football before week 3. But that all included, he still has Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs at the top. And they're both being unleashed this season. Bijan with 23 touches in week 1 and then 18 last week. By the way, he averaged only 15 touches a game last season in a very anemic offense as well. So Brandon's got to be very happy to see that being utilized, that utilization for Bijan. But as I mentioned, I talked about Tua's injury affecting Wuxie Fingerhold, but I think Tua's injury hurts Brandon the most out of any playoff contender tier teams in our league by a mile. Brandon is elite at every single spot except for wide receiver and tight end coming into the season, where he's ranked 4th. In any other league, especially with the caliber of Brandon's teams, ranked 4 means you're shooting for the playoffs, which Brandon certainly is. But being ranked 4th for the caliber of the team that he's built together, that roster, was always weak coming in. And then now you got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle being impacted by being replaced, with Skylar Thompson or whoever they end up bringing in. So Brandon was ranked at fourth in wide receiver position, with Tyreek Hill ranked as a third best wide receiver overall, and Jalen Waddle being ranked as the fourth best overall wide receiver two in our league. And this is all before Tua's injury and the future uncertainty in the short term, midterm, long term. So I do think there's going to be some movements for Brandon Mega, especially given that Ayuk and Stephon Diggs both look a little rusty, and Stephon Diggs definitely looks like he's missing a step a little bit. All right, moving on to Moncton Meerkats. 118, like I said, pulls off the win for Moncton Meerkats. This was pretty close, but James Conner continues to do James Conner things. Consistent, steady, reliable. And Sam Darnold looks like an actual fantasy relevant quarterback. He's leading the Vikings to an amazing start to the season. He looks tremendous, and doesn't look like Justin Jefferson's going to be out for a long time. Just sounds like it was just a contusion. So Sam Darnold might still continue to be able to air it out. And it's really, really good to see Sam Darnold with some good offensive power around him, allowing him to do stuff, especially under competent coach in KOC. Stinkers wise, Michael Pittman's on here, but that we'll talk about this for the next team. But Anthony Richardson really can't figure out the passing game right now, and that's really, really impacting the overall game at large. And a lot of the passing calls are being turned into runs attempts by Anthony Richardson, and he's also completing less than 50% of his passes. So it's certainly going to be impacting the wide receiver one of that offense, which is Michael Pittman. All right, speaking of Anthony Richardson, moving over to Kevin Yib, who pulls off the victory behind the backs of Marvin Harrison, who breaks out finally. 4 receptions, 130 plus yards, I believe 2 tutties, 27 points in fantasy. Unfortunately, that came all in the first quarter, but at least we got to see glimpses of how amazing Marvin Harrison can be in this league and will be in the league. So he's certainly got a great pick there. I believe Marvin was the second overall pick this season in the rookie draft. So certainly a get there, and I think we'll continue to see Kyler and Marvin Harrison's connection grow throughout the season. We had Jordan Mason, also the 49er love. Any running back in that scheme is going to do well, and Jordan Mason showed that he wasn't a 1 week wonder. Another phenomenal week, very consistent, 2 weeks over 15 points, scored 16.9 and a tutty again. And I think for as long as CMC's out, Jordan Mason's going to be a locked and loaded plug and play RB1 for Kevin Yip. Stinkers, though, like I said, QBs, the entire QB position for Kevin looks pretty rough right now. And we'll see how it starts to play out. But it's not looking good with Anthony Richardson. And so hopefully, especially with the Vikings rookie not being able to really play much this season, being out, hopefully we're going to be able to see a lot of quarterback play. But I do believe clearing that quarterback hurdle is going to be what sets Kevin into a more consistent output of 100+ point weeks. And that's going to set him in for the playoffs to come. So I think his roster is shaping up really, really well. Now, moving over to a little bit of a disappointment, actually quite a bit of disappointment to start the season in full Jerry. I got to say, Jerry's probably got the biggest disappointment to start the season, scoring a 105, which isn't terrible, but certainly going 0-2 to start the season is not looking good. And also notable being Cooper Kupp scoring 25, which is great to see, especially with Puka Nacua out, but now Cooper Kupp being out. Looks like John's not going to even get a few weeks worth of healthy Cooper Kupp for his roster. And his roster is aging. So you got Cooper Kupp with injuries, and you got Travis Kelce being a stinker this week for me. And full Jerry moving over 0-2. I think a slow start this year is going to be very, very detrimental with the way that the previous teams who missed out on the playoffs are looking up and upgraded and reloaded for this season ahead. All right, moving over to the next matchup, we got Two Shots No Cup going against Mr. Ambassador. Two Shots No Cup drops here, going 0-2, and Mr. Ambassador goes 1-1, gets a win here. Scores a respectable 96 points for the week. For the week at large, I was 8th points, but the week was relatively low scoring, and scoring 96 and being in the middle of the pack, I think that was a good look for Mr. Ambassador. It was really great to see Brock, Rasheed, and Zay kicking things off. I think he's got to be pretty pumped about seeing both of those young studs, or all of those young studs, really, really shining on their offenses. Now, Rasheed Rice and Zay Flowers look like wide receiver one, bona fide wide receiver ones for their offenses. And Brock Bowers, not many people are really talking about him, but I'll tell you what, Brock Bowers is actually, I think, going underrated. I do think he's going to be the unanimous Dynasty Tight End 1 consensus unanimous by week 5. And the kid is leading the league for tight ends in terms of yards, which is at 156. He's also leading the league with tight ends in terms of targets at 18 and receptions at 15. So it's only 2 weeks in. But man, that offense is shocking everyone right now. And you got Minshew slinging the rocket, looking prime. Um, and I think Brock Bowers is certainly helping that cause. And he looks really, really good in a really challenging year for tight ends all overall. Um, Unfortunately, another young stud that he drafted a couple years back, Christian Watson, lays a donut here. I think the entire Packers offense receiver core is crowded already. Every young player sort of around the same age, around the same experience, same skill set. It's just being crowded out. There's four of them there. That's all relevant at any given time. And when Jordan Love's out, and you got Malik Willis as a replacement throwing less than 20 throws a game, there's going to be not much to go around. Unfortunately, the victim here was Christian Watson last week, but I don't think this means anything for Watson necessarily. We're just going to see what happens to Packer offense when Jordan Love is healthy and coming back. Now, two shots, no cup. Obviously, shows a score after week one, which is actually impressive. Seeing that two shots, no cup can almost get into 100 points. Maybe this is going to be the new Eve with the new reloaded roster. Last week two drops it back to reality again, sort of going back to his norm from last season's average around that 60 mark, scoring 58.9 here. It was great though. That said, Quentin Johnson, two tutties, 19.6, leading his two shots no cup, representing about 33% of his points from one player. But Quentin Johnson finally had a high-end fantasy relevant season in an NFL career in his sophomore year in week two. It's great to see, and hopefully they're going to be able to utilize him more. And I hope that mentally just puts some fire into Quentin Johnson. And they need an answer there. There's no Keenan Allen. There's no Mike Williams. It's all him. He's got it to show up. It's not going to be just he can't just give it up to McConkey. So hopefully QJ is going to continue to flourish for two shots, no cup. It was great to see in week two. That said, Bryce Young might be the end of Bryce Young's era in Carolina Panthers. Short a year and 2 weeks, already benched. But I do believe that this isn't the end for Bryce Young for this season for the Panthers, and I don't think it's going to be the end of his career in NFL. He's the number one pick for a reason last year. I do think he's going to have continued more shots, and I hope that him being benched is going to put some fire under his belly and give him a chance to mentally sort of reset and recover and get some mental reps behind watching a veteran sort of go to work, and hopefully that puts him at a better position when he comes back into the starting lineup. All right, moving over to the last matchup recap from last week. We had Huge Dicka going against Brady Stir Dynasty. Brady Stir Dynasty scoring 190 plus. Love to see this out of the young man going 2-0 to start the season. Leads the league at 192, sets the high water mark of the season in the league at that mark. Man, it was great to see Alvin Kamara going 43 points with 4 tutties. I think just tremendous to see. Devin Achan, I think, is doing tremendously well. There is a world out there that Devin Achan finishes the top 5 RB this season as well. So Bracer Dynasty continues to do really, really well. One of the things that I really did want to point out for Ryan here is that, what a draft pick by Ryan, or sorry, what kind of like trades can you imagine? Like some of the incredible trades that he's continued to build to extend his championship window. Um, so imagine what his roster would look like if you reverse the Devin Achan trade and the CJ Stripe trades. His quarterbacks might be the bottom of the league, having to pick 2 to start among Danny Jones, Russell Wilson, and Deshaun Watson. But he's got both of those guys flourishing and continue to extend his championship window. So it's really, really great to see. Now, moving over to Huge Dicka, Travis. Again, respectable 111. That's a good enough for 4th, right in the tier with Kyle and Brandon for this week. It was great to see James Cook being unleashed. 28 points to start the season for week 2. He started off the season really, really strong. I do think Huge Dicka is going to be certainly a contender for the playoffs, yes, with the way that things are playing. Still question marks surrounding his roster, and we'll talk a little bit about that in new sections sort of coming up. So that said, new season, new fresh section. We are 2 weeks into the season, and I'm putting my stethoscope on, and I'm going doctor mode and diagnosing 2 of you managers with some premature extrapolations, better known as PE and fantasy. So patient number 1, step in. You got Bills Mafia. So the way that I see Brandon's roster as it's constructed today is if Tua breaks, so does Brandon's chances at his first championship with his current roster construction. He's elite and deep at quarterback and running back, and he's certainly got the talent to have the running backs fill into his flex spots. but I fully expect Brandon to be active in trying to trade up for some elite wide receivers, utilizing those pieces. So the P diagnosis for me is that he's still a shoe in for the playoffs, still very much a contender. But despite he's still very much a contender, despite the indirect risk tied to Tua, given heavy concentration to be wide receiver one, wide receiver two, and Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. The prescription for me on the P diagnosis for Brandon is to stay calm, but alert and active for high end wide receiver trade opportunities. I really like a player like Rashee Rice, for example, for Bills Mafia's roster. Still expecting a 10 win season out of the young man, 10-4, third best odds for championship here. All right, moving over to patient number 2. We've got our boy Travis here. So there is a world out there where you don't have to worry about Joe Burrow's wrist and Kirk Cousins playing better than he did on the Vikings as he fully recovers from his Achilles injury as the season progresses. James Cook being a top 5 RB with the way that the Bills are running the offense and being committed to running the offense, running the ball. Joe Mixon with the usage. Week 2, he was a little flicky on injury, but week 1, we saw his usage number. So Joe Mixon finishing the season as a top 3 running back, leading the league in touches. Jamison Williams, and finally breaking out behind Amon-Ra St. Brown in his 3rd season on the line, similar to how Waddle has played behind Tyreek Hill in Miami. Man, that would be a great world for Travis. Unfortunately, that's not the simulation that we live in. I do think 2 of those 5 things will happen for Travis. Now, the diagnosis here, another year of being mid again. And what my concern for Travis is that Jordan Love will likely miss 3 to 4 weeks or more. And if Travis starts off slow in the season like he did last year, I don't think he will have the luxury of being pushed into the playoffs by like he did by Brad's maneuvers late last season. As every team that missed the playoffs last season is actually significantly better this season. So, like I said last week, unfortunately for Travis, he's got a pretty tough schedule ahead. He will most likely be sitting at 1-4 after week 5 as he's facing John this week, followed by Kyle, and then trust the process. So the prescription here for the diagnosis for PE is don't be satisfied by being mid. Tank to rebuild like Brandon and Eves, or try to squeeze wins on using the future assets like what John's doing. I do think this season, come mid-season, there will be a lot of buyers for 4 putts players. But I'm calling a 5-9 season. He's obviously got the 6 best odds for championship, but I really, really do feel iffy on calling Travis making the playoffs this year, unfortunately. So that moves me over to the week 3 matchups. Looking ahead, we got the first matchup, trust the process, going up against Mr. Ambassador. We got Sleeper here projecting 68% for me. I'm not going to say otherwise. I'm going to go up 2-1. Mr. Ambassador goes down 1-2. Second matchup, we got Eve against Bills Mafia. Sleeper's got this at a nice, cool 69% for Bills Mafia. I got the leaning the same way. 2-1 for Bills Mafia. 0-3 to start for the season. Just 2 shots, no cup. Still seeking for his first win. We got Wooksy Fingerhold against Moncton Meerkats. Sleeper's got this at 63%. I'm sticking with it. Nothing contrarian so far. Moncton Meerkats stays perfect at 3-0. Wooksy Fingerhold probably drops to 1-2. All right, so we got Brady Stir Dynasty against Kevin Yip here. 61% says Sleeper, and so do I. We got Brady Stir Dynasty going to be moving at 3-0. Kevin's going to be dropping to 1-2. And then it moves to the Commissioners matchup of the week, which is going to be the mid face-off between Full Jerry against Huge Dicka. Full Jerry winless at 0-2. Huge Dicka coming off a loss at 1-1. Sleeper's got this going pretty even on both sides. I got this as the Commissioner matchup of the week because I think this is going to have really deep playoff implications for both of these teams, as dropping to 0-3 for Full Jerry is going to be really, really tough. And if Huge Dicka does not pull this win off, he's likely going to be sitting at 1-4 after week 5 as well. So this right now for me, at least in the early part of the season, I'm not saying the season's lost, but this for me feels like a must win for both of these teams, as much as must wins can get in the 3rd week of the season. But I've got this one going to John. So I'm sticking with sleeper picks all throughout this week here. But I got Full Jerry moving up 1-2 and Huge Dicka dropping to 1-2 here. All right, so the last section to finish it all off is our favorite section of them all. We got power rankings heading into week 3 at the conclusion of our week 2. And I got Brady Stir Dynasty moving up to the number 1 spot, moving to Brady Stir Dynasty output the top on points for with a huge 190 points on the week 2. He also scored 3rd highest at just shy under 140, I believe. So rightfully, he's sitting at the top on the throne, on the first place on the power rankings. Moncton Meerkats, I got him dropping just by the virtue of Brady Stir Dynasty, but also because of a disappointing week 2 output. Trusted Process moves up the spot, representing closer to where the points for have been. sitting second in the league at 302. We got Bills Mafia dropping 2 spots, sitting at 1-1. Really sort of a disappointing points for to start, 240 on that team. Quite disappointing. And then you got Huge Dicka and Full Jerry there. You sort of see after the fourth tier teams, you sort of start to see a tier break here a little bit. Huge Dicka, Full Jerry, Mr. Ambassador. I would put them right now around the same tier, but for now, given the records and given the teams, I'd have Huge Dicka at 5, Full Jerry at 6, Mr. Ambassador at 7, but the same tier for me, and expect some movements after this week, certainly. And we got Kevin and Milksy Fingerhold switching spots here. Kevin, I'm going to move him up a spot with 8, with how we saw Marvin Harrison really taking off. And Milksy Fingerhold dropping a spot with how we've seen Caleb Williams struggling in both of those positions that are viable for them on teams that really need those point outputs. We got Two Shots No Cup staying at 0-2, bottom of the league at 10, at the lowest points 4. I do believe that Two Shots No Cup will have at least one game over 100 points this week. I believe he did not clear that mark last season, but that does it for our week 2 power rankings, week 2 recap, and week 3 previews. This was your commissioner, Tim Che. Have a great Sunday. Enjoy your Monday Night Football games, and good luck.